Ubisoft has made many decisions to further better the health of Siege. However, there have been quite a few changes that community was not too pleased with. That being said, these are 15 controversial changes Siege has made. It's no secret that Ubisoft wants to milk their player base of their money when it comes to subscriptions and in-game cosmetics, but when Operation New Blood came along, they crossed the line almost nobody was happy about. The Rainbow Six Siege membership was released, replacing the Year Pass, and became Siege's first monthly subscription users could pay for in order to receive exclusive in-game cosmetics, currency packs, and more. The problem is, no one asked for this, and it became very apparent to the player base that this whole scheme is just a money grab for Ubisoft. Crimson Heist was the start of Siege's 6th year of updates, and through the entire year, there was no Year Pass available for the first time. Players were unhappy with this change and were quick to express their feelings online, and so Ubisoft took note of the frustration and brought back the Year Pass for Year 7 and Year 8. You would think Ubisoft has learned a valuable lesson from this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But they tried to fix it again, which brings us to Year 9 in the Rainbow Six Siege membership. Having players not happy with the pricing and the monthly reward system, maybe we'll see a return of the Year Pass sometime soon, who knows. What we probably won't see a return of though are the white masks from everyone's favorite warm-up mode, Terrorist Hunt. A game mode to have fun with friends, test weapons, vibe to music, just gone. The game mode started to fall apart in Operation Ember Rise when Ubisoft removed bombers from the game mode completely. Well, yes, they could be annoying at times. The bombers brought that adrenaline-inducing aspect to the playlist you couldn't get elsewhere. To compensate for players who disagree with this change, it would have been nice to have the option to turn off bombers from spawning, but instead, they just left one side of the community with nothing. Operation Void Edge is when Ubisoft decided to change the game mode's name to Training Grounds for no real reason, and then came the reveal for Operation Deep Freeze, and the crowd was nowhere near happy when the developers stated they would be removing Training Grounds and replacing it with Versus AI. While we have gotten more game modes other than Versus AI that bring alternate training options to players such as the shooting range and the endless drill, it's just not the same compared to playing Terrorist Hunt, especially on the map House, which received a rework as well. The original House map was a part of the game ever since the world premiere trailer launch and has been with us ever since until Ubisoft believed it was time to redesign the map in Operation Steel Wave. The original House was home to custom game lobbies for players to join in and have fun with their friends, and Ubisoft decided to take it all away just for it to be a casual map. This was the first time Ubisoft experimented with reworking a map for it to be fit for what was known as casual at the time, and while the map may look more aesthetically pleasing compared to the original, the community would have rather held on to the nostalgia that lived within the original map. And while mostly one side disagreed with this change, the decision to remove Zophia's withstand destroyed the community. They were split into two, the casual player base versus the competitive player base. Removing Zophia's withstand had players from the casual player base feeling betrayed because they believed Ubisoft were catering to the professionals after a very particular incident happened during a Pro League match early 2021. Here, take a look for yourself.
They hurt him, they see him, they drop him. He's not quite finished. Sophia. They're trying to pull themselves back up, but with 20 seconds and a man upstairs somehow! Aces goes down a 1 versus 1. They lost it. They picked themselves up just in time. Corey versus Usus.
After this had happened, professional players took their complaints to Twitter, furious on how this could be allowed in the game. They believed Zophia's withstand was more of a passive ability, which didn't belong in the game of Siege. Not even 2 weeks later after this incident happened, Ubisoft removed all of Zophia's passive abilities. No more withstand, no more resistance to concussion effects. The casual player base was left outraged by this change as they felt Ubisoft stabbed them in the back and it had taken quite a while for that wound to heal. Aruni is the only operator left in the game to have a passive ability, being her robotic arm, and so one day, we might just see that same wound reopen. What the community can come together to fight for is to re-add night maps back into Siege. We've seen a nighttime version of multiple maps since the release in both ranked and casual playlists until Operation Wind Bastion showed up. Ubisoft saw dark maps would take away from the competitive gameplay Siege brings, and so night maps were removed from the ranked playlist completely. Players were still able to enjoy the nighttime aesthetic in casual though. Well, until Ubisoft said, night mode will no longer be available in the casual and newcomer playlists. Yeah, this did not sit well with the community. Then came the final nail in the coffin during Operation Void Edge, when nighttime maps were removed from custom games and had left Siege forever from what we know. Even after multiple years later, players are still begging for night maps to be added back into the game. However, players are begging for yellow pinging, also known as soft pinging, to be removed. Well, at least the competitive players are. In high-ranked games and Pro League matches, players are not fond of the feature that comes along with drones and cameras, because players are able to mark an opponent with said opponent not knowing their position has been compromised, leading to an unfair advantage. Casual players, on the other hand, enjoy this feature because they are able to communicate with their fellow teammates about an opponent while not needing to know the name of the callout. It makes for a much more fun experience for those who don't play Siege on a daily basis. If Ubisoft proposed the alternative to turn off yellow pinging for all players in the ranked playlist, yet still keep it active in quick play, I would think players ought to be happy with this change. Competitive players receive a more competitive experience, and casual players keep their casual experience. Something that didn't affect the experience of the game just yet was attackers and defenders being able to control surveillance utility while eliminated for the rest of the round. The reason I say just yet is because Ubisoft presented this feature inside of a test server in the year 2021. Players had the chance to get their hands on a new feature that would potentially make its way into the live build. Before the test server went live, players were quick to speak their thoughts, some saying this would be a perfect way to eliminate downtime, and others saying this would be too powerful and just makes no sense. Once the test server came online, most players were quick to realize being able to control gadgets while eliminated is not meant for Siege. Does Ubisoft agree with what us players wanted back then? We'll never know. What Ubisoft clearly doesn't agree with us on is banning cheaters on consoles. At the 2023 Invitational, Siege announced an industry-first console anti-cheat when it comes to detecting third-party devices on consoles for first-person shooter games. The problem is, when they announced this hardware that could detect mouse and keyboard users, they wouldn't ban them. This became very controversial, as Ubisoft has said before, using a mouse and keyboard on console is considered cheating. Yet all these cheaters get at the moment is a slap on the wrist, and console players are nowhere near happy with the results. The results of the laser sight change are also something to be questioned, as shotguns have been affected big time. In Year 8 Season 3, Ram was released, and alongside her came a massive buff to shotguns. Yes, the shotguns did get tuned down a little later on because they may have been a bit too good, but once that did happen, they were in a good spot. 2 seasons later, and that all changed. The pros and cons that attachments brought to a weapon were all changed in Operation Deadly Omen, including the laser sight. For the longest time, the laser sight has stayed the same, but now instead of increasing the hipfire accuracy of your weapon, the aim down sight speed of your weapon will now be increased. Since this change, players have been left scratching their heads or breaking their monitors, you know which one you are, after not eliminating an enemy point blank with a shotgun. Throwing a flashbang right under the opponent's feet, leaving them with perfect vision after it goes off, can also be rage-inducing. Ubisoft saw this as a problem, and so their solution was to make it so players can't just look away from a flashbang to avoid being flashed. With such a big change, this obviously didn't settle well with part of the community, and players were quick to express their opinions about it. Over some time, players have gotten over it, while others are still yet to be satisfied. Ranked is something that not many players are satisfied with either, and while the whole system is still a work in progress, being able to see the opponents and your teammates' ranks in-game was something players did enjoy. For those who are joining Siege for the first time in its later stage, you may not be aware that you used to have the capability to view everyone's rank at the end of the match to see what kind of players you won or lost against. Showing players' ranks through a bit of competition and, dare I say, friendly banter between teams into the mix until it was no more. However, friendly banter can be found in Quick Match 2.0. It's a perfect place for casual players to hop in and play a few games of Siege with their friends, and that's really all it's good for, the casual player base. While I'm not saying that's a bad thing, players with more experience aren't happy how Ubisoft turned casual, a playlist for all, into this new controversial game mode. With Quick Match 2.0, the prep phase timer is much shorter, action phase is faster, and the most problematic one of them all, bomb sites are pre-set up. The developers have mentioned they use common setups from high-ranked games for Quick Match 2.0, but it becomes very apparent very quickly that can't be the case. Users who've played the game long-term see this game mode as more of a team deathmatch mode with objectives and not the strategic game Siege is meant to be, even if it's supposed to be for players who play the game at a casual level. For something that doesn't affect gameplay at all, Hibana's face is a great conversation starter. If you're not aware of what happened to Hibana, Operation Burnt Horizon gave her a makeover to, well, one would argue make her look better, while another would say she now looks worse. You would think people can't get upset over how someone looks, right? Well, that is exactly what happened to those who were in love with Hibana. And at this point, Reddit seems to be the place for people to voice their opinion about changes that are more of a controversial problem than they are meant to be. What most players would take seriously, though, are Valkyrie cameras being placed and used outside. From a competitive aspect, placing Valkyrie cameras outside was extremely unfair because they are so small and unnoticeable, the only way to ever find them was to bring an IQ in your operator lineup, hence why Ubisoft nerfed their cameras to lose signal after 10 seconds of being outside. Valkyrie enthusiasts dislike this change, obviously, because, well, they were the ones throwing the cameras outside to get the eliminations, so their opinions are a little biased. Something no one asked for, yet we still got, was a Tachanka rework. The Russian originally had a mounted LMG as seen in his operator video, and later on, that LMG got even better when it received a frontal shield attached to the weapon. This shield could take quite a lot of shots before it ended up being broken, and Tachanka was actually in a good place where he could be used for fun. Then in 2020, Ubisoft showed off a complete rework of Tachanka's gadget after secretly working on it for months. He received his LMG as a primary weapon, and then to replace his gadget, he got a fire grenade launcher. While fans were actually happy with what they saw in the moment, fast forward a few months later, and Tachanka was rarely used and still is to this day. So my question is, would the community rather have the old Tachanka back? But anyways, that has been 15 changes leading to some disagreement and controversy inside Siege.